So we'll just try and keep flipping through these here and get to some more chairs. So this was the first bar stool I made. This has been the item I've sold the most of. I've sold, I think, about 65 of these as of last year in about a 3-year time span. This is also where I realized and figured out that the front to back curve on the seat is the most comfortable. We used to laminate these back legs. Here we started steam bending them now because just the amount of clamping and like the wear and tear on the wrists just can't do it anymore. You always, with these, we pre-taper them. So this goes from about 45 millimeters down to 30, which would be like saying about 1 5/8" down to 1 1/8". And we pre-taper those before we steam bend them, which just means that when we're putting them on the shaper jig later, we're not taking a whole bunch more material off the foot area than we are up at the top. Like I said, we used to laminate those, so that would be about 15 to 20 clamps per leg, 2 lambs a day. This was actually one of the only seats I never made a prototype for, really. I just kind of built this one and got lucky. This is the 3rd dining chair that I designed and built. This is, right now I'm doing a run of 12 of these for 2 separate clients. So the main design feature in this chair is the negative space in the seat, which is by putting 2 seat plies together that have different bends, which is also mimicked here in the back. So you can see the back splits apart, and there's the negative space which gets locked onto the frame. So going back to that last chair I showed you, this is exactly the same. Every joint in this chair is 90 by 90. Now you can see it right here. Like these legs, they come in 90 degrees and come out. This is an enormous block. I think it's 4 1/4 inches. And it gets joined. There's 4 floating tenons back here. There's 2 floating tenons up here. And then we curve it afterwards. The joint in the front legs to the front stretcher, same thing, 90 by 90. For joints where I need more depth, I cut the router. And the thing is like, this back leg here is only 1 3/8" or so. And you need to, the sort of rule of thumb with Mortise and tenons is you want to go 2/3 deep. So 28 mils, that is 2/3 of the way into the leg. So the domino most of the time can give me the depth I need. Almost all, we'll explore it a little bit more later, but almost everything is double or triple tenons, which, does everyone know what I mean by that? So like cutting a double tenon is a pretty daunting task. If you're making it a floating tenon, it becomes a little bit simpler. If you make it a floating tenon and cut with the domino, it's pretty easy because I can take this piece into this piece, let's say, and I want there to be 2 tenons here. I can clamp this down to my bench, and I can reference the domino off the bench and cut one, and then put a 1/2 inch or a 3/4 inch piece of MDF or plywood underneath, cut the second one, clamp that down to my bench, use exactly the same spacers, and I have a double tenon joint that's just gonna line up. It's just the way it is. If you want, a lot of people like to have a little reveal. If you want your 1/8 inch reveal, you just put an 1/8 inch spacer under this piece. The domino is something I resisted for far too long in my life. Basically, these side stretchers right here, they're joined into the back legs about right here, and they run up the seat and join into the front stretcher, which is across here. But they're, the seat overhangs it as it grows, which also means that my bottom stretcher in here, just another 90 by 90 degree joint. The front of these guys, 90 by 90. Everything is 90 by 90. And we will get to some examples where that gets a little bit more complicated. This was a recycled chair, pulled it out of the garbage, put an extra seat in back I had on it. This is a Pierce car piece. This is an 8-foot long sideboard, alternating grain direction in the circles. So as you walk around it, the circles either look a little bit lighter or a little bit darker than the rest of the piece. Push drawers, little end tables, nothing too complicated. This dining chair I made actually when I had a private student in my class. He was on the dining chair portion of the outline we had come up with, and through teaching him and watching him, got all like jazzed up and wanted to build a chair. So I took a couple of days away from my commissioned work to build and design a chair. And the whole idea with this initially was to build it all out of solid wood components, so no bending. Trying to hit a price point of $1,000 or less, which I initially did, and then started selling enough of them that I raised the price up. And along the lines, we also started steam bending that front leg so we can get a little bit of a sweeter stance on it. It's not the one that's pictured, but that's sort of same idea, like 90 by 90 construction makes things simpler. Not having to laminate or steam bend or kerf bend or anything that's not just cut out of a solid board greatly simplifies your life. We half lap this stretcher in here over top of this stretcher, and it sticks out beyond and sort of tapers out so it supports the seat more. When you're doing a bend like that bar stool, for instance, with the back leg like this, basically what you're doing is you're just compressing the fibers all along this inside face. You have a straight blank, and you put a piece of spring steel across the back, and you have an end block here that it jams up to. And I always put an end block here. And the way I always do it, like you can buy like the Michael Fortune Veritas, like get your ratchet out and adjust it system, which is a great system. I find it a little bit limiting, but I always just put a hard block in with about an 1/8 or a 1/4 inch gap. And then I have 2 shims with me. And I'll do this part of the bend, and then like I'll have my helper put 2 clamps on, and then I'll pop the strap back off, put one of the shims in, do the rest of the bend, and that way like I'm releasing the tension that the wood is under as I go, but not enough that it'll break. Because a lot of times these the ratchet system, you over compress the wood, and then as it dries, it kind of freaks out and it moves too much. This is the first rocking chair I made, but the second rocking chair I designed. It's white oak. Those are all steam bent laminations. So cutting laminations first that are thick, too thick to make the bend, then steam bending them, and then laminating them after they've dried for a little while. And what that allows me to do is it minimizes spring back, virtually no spring back. And it minimizes the amount of lambs I have to cut, but also if I'm going to be shaping, so like putting a pillow or a thumbnail or a bevel onto any of my parts, you're not going to be shaping through laminations. More of the same rocking chair. That's a silk finish, which is a traditional Scandinavian finish. It's woven with monofilament, which is a fancy way of saying fishing line. But it has a better chance of selling if you call it monofilament. That's 300-pound test fishing line dyed black. It's really, really comfortable because it kind of flexes a little bit to your body, and it kind of it molds and morphs too a bit. Now the real advantage is this is a white oak chair that weighs 7.5 pounds. Another dining chair. This one is not a 90 by 90 chair, and not a chair that's terribly profitable for me to make. So this is one piece that was turned as a double taper that I sawed apart at an angle, and then there's an epoxy and threaded rod in that joint, and then this piece here I drilled out with a Forstner bit to match what the radius of the leg was there, and then same thing, put an epoxy and threaded rod in there. Part of it too for me is this may be epoxy and threaded rod, but there are double bare-face tenons on these stretchers that run across here, which are then locked in here. And because this stretcher now half laps over top of this front one and extends past, we kind of lock the whole bottom of it together. So this can't really flex out